Welcome to Moments with Marianne. This is your host, Marianne Pastana, and we're here today with special guest, Kim Chestney, who's here to share with us her new book, The Illumination Code, 7 Keys to Unlocking Your Quantum Intelligence. Are you looking to empower your inner wisdom? Well, today's guest is going to share with us how to do just that. So Kim Chestney is the author of Radical Intuition and the Psychic Workshop. As the founder of Intuition Lab and the Create Festival, her work raises awareness about the importance of insight in the evolution of individual and world consciousness. Working for nearly 20 years in the tech sector, Chestney has led initiatives with some of the top thought leaders, technology companies, and universities in the world. So welcome to the show, Kim Chestney.
Thanks for having me, Marianne. It's great to be here.
What an honor it is to have you here and to talk about this book. So what even inspired you to write this?
Yeah, well, I think a lot of it stemmed out of from our last conversation, my previous book, Radical Intuition. I was working with many people who had used the practices in that book to really start experiencing their intuition in really new and profound ways. And once this started to happen, when people started to have these extraordinary experiences with their intuition, things that should be possible, like being able to think of someone and then have them call on the phone or know something that's going to happen before it actually does. All the different beautiful, wonderful things that happen in the realm of intuition, people started asking me, well, how does it actually work? How is it possible for our intuition to do these things? They should be impossible according to the laws of physics that we know. So I set out with the question to really answer that in a no-nonsense way. Is it spirit guides talking to us? Is it supernatural powers? Well, the answer actually is found in our contemporary understanding of quantum physics. So yeah, I went down the rabbit hole and I worked with physicists and scientists and did a lot of research. It took me over a year to write this book, and I'm so excited to have had the opportunity to bring these ideas, sort of filter them down into everyday conversation for folks like you and me to understand how these deep concepts apply to intuition.
Well, you have to explain to me the Illumination Code. Like, what does that even mean?
Yeah. So the idea behind this book, after I really started looking into, the mechanics of how intuition's working through our deep dimension and how that inner wisdom is actually conveyed between our consciousnesses. And what ended up, really growing out of it was this understanding that we live in amidst a field that's called the non-local field, a quantum field, a unified field where all of us are connected. Everything in the world and all the information in the world is stored. And through our intuition, we're able to sort of access the information that is stored through codes in this invisible field. So the Illumination Code for me was really a sort of contemporary understanding of our inner wisdom and our intuition and how we're actually able to sort of decode these guiding messages from the universe and these synchronicities and all of these really powerful moments that occur when we connect to the deep dimension within us.
So how does that relate to the concept of quantum intelligence?
Yeah, so understanding ultimately where this book led me after going down the rabbit hole and researching it is understanding that intuition is, in fact, a quantum phenomenon. We've often wondered, what in the past, like when things would happen with intuition, we didn't understand how they worked. So we would call it occult or supernatural or some sort of word that, basically meant we have no idea how this is happening. We're kind of afraid of it. So we're just going to push this under the rug and pretend it's not real. And so that's how a lot of the sort of negative connotations came around intuitive work and experiences. But what we're starting to understand now is that, even through, great visionaries like Einstein and Steve Jobs, Nicholas Tesla, huge advocates of intuition, is that intuition is not something abnormal, not something to be afraid. It's a natural part of our wiring as human beings. And it is, in fact, our quantum intelligence. So genius, the genius that arises in a moment of insight that, we've heard Einstein talk about his aimless moments, and he'd solve problems in the middle of the night when he wakes up from his sleep, right? So it's one of those things where we have the everyday intelligence, right? We figure things out, we solve problems, we're really, really smart. But then there's this sort of quantum intelligence, this intelligence that we simply receive from our connection, our interconnection to that field of everything and all of the information that's out there in the universe. So, I like to think that we're learning to balance both sides of our brain by starting to adapt to this intuitive kind of intelligence that allows us to do things that once were thought to be impossible.
In your book, you talk about 7 illumination keys. I'd love for you to share the first one with us.
Yeah, so the first one is the real big one. It really sets up the book, and it's a series of keys really to sort of unlock this deep dimension within you to go deeper and deeper into your own experience of your really eternal nature. So the first key is each key is sort of it's sort of a mindset shift, right? So understanding and adopting these 7 mindset shifts is what's going to help you to work and use your quantum intelligence throughout your life and experience that magic of the universe that comes with it. So the first key and the most important key that really sets off the rest of the book is the understanding that a part of you knows everything. And this is something that some people find difficult to really accept, but others of us know that something like that's been going on in my whole life. There's a part of me, a higher self, a deeper self that knows things that I don't know, right, and guides me intuitively. So understanding that we don't have to think of things in terms of woo-woo concepts with intuition. There's really just simply a part of our mind, of our consciousness that knows everything. It knows what's happening with your friends and family when they're in distant places. It knows what tarot card you're going to pick when you pull a card. It knows the future, the past. It knows it all. So when we start to recognize that this is real and there really is a dimension of our being that has access to all the wisdom and information in the universe, then things like intuitive manifestations like precognition or telepathy or prophecy or so many things that are around extrasensory perception really start to make sense. So leaning into this place of acknowledging that you can trust yourself, trust this inner guidance because it comes from a place, the part of you that knows everything.
So, how do we get to this place where we can really determine what we're getting is our intuition?
Yeah, so that's really one of the key factors. And as the keys go on, you learn more about the qualities of genuine intuition, right? So in order to live by our intuition and by that part of us that knows everything, we have to learn to trust it and know that we're listening to the right voice in our head, right? Because there's a lot of voices in our head. We have our conditioning, we have our inner critic. There's a lot of different ways we talk to ourselves, but we want to align ourselves with that one true north, that voice of our intuition that's always guiding us in the right direction. And the best way to do that is to honor it and learn to trust it. So it's through intuitive practice, through the process of taking that risk and trusting yourself when you have a hunch and seeing how it plays out. And once you start to trust and follow your intuition, the more you do that, the stronger it becomes. So it's really like going to the gym for your intuition. The more you use it, the more you practice with it, the stronger it gets. So it's really important to slow down, to listen, to start, shifting our allegiance from, following everything in the world outside of us in the material world and starting to listen to those nudges and cues and insights that arise from the inside world within us.
It seems that everyone can pretty much identify with having these intuitive nudges and
Mhm.
just knowing that even though it seems impossible, that these things are possible.
Yeah, absolutely. If you think back at like 200 years ago, uh, we didn't have any idea about quantum physics. And, I know everybody talks about quantum this, quantum that, right? But this is it really deeply applies to the shift in consciousness that's happening all around the world, even in our culture, in our practices. So 200 years ago, if someone had an experience with, say, a vision or a ghost, or even like had a moment of telepathy, they would say, oh, that doesn't make any sense. That's impossible. Or you were just making that up, or you were hallucinating, or it was just a coincidence, right? There's so many different ways we've learned to write off our intuition that we're all so used to writing it off. But finally, we're starting to realize, okay, we have to stop doing that, because so many of us have experienced these things that we have to acknowledge that they're real and actually look for an explanation instead of just keep trying to pretend they don't exist. So now, right, 200 years later, these things happen, and we understand. We understand computers, for one thing. Like, that's something that wasn't even a thing back then. We didn't understand concepts like storing information on a hard drive or transferring information through light. All things that are very much parallel to what we're discovering is happening in this non-local field. We transfer energy on a subliminal level, energetically, between us, right? In this invisible ether, this invisible worldwide web of information that's held in the space between us. So now we have a better understanding of what's possible in terms of making this stuff happen in our material world than we did 200 years ago. So it's really time that we all sort of, lean into these experiences and start to use them and allow them to inform us and guide us and expand our minds.
So, what are some practices that we can use that will help us to really think with our quantum intelligence?
Yeah, and so this book is full of them, let me tell you. So as you know from my books in the past, all my books are really doing books. They're not just reading books. So I really want to, explain and set up the sort of the metaphysical scenario that surrounds this kind of work, and to offer an explanation to start with the philosophy. But ultimately, these books are about practicing these things and learning to do them yourself. So don't take it from me. I want you to go out there and experience these things, because it's only when you have these experiences that you really truly believe in them and can stand by them. Like, that's sort of the role of the mystic, right? We experience things. That's how we learn. It's not just about reading about them or writing about them. It's about experiencing them. So this book is designed to help you experience things you never thought you could do, like remote viewing, precognition, past life recall, all different sorts of manifestations of intuitive phenomena. So there's over 30 different exercises in this book that you can do to see how you've already been using intuition in your life naturally. Because like you said, we've all had these experiences to a certain degree. But then really, once you recognize the way your intuition has been working naturally within you, there's things you can do to get more of them, right? Slowing down, learning to listen, learning the qualities of intuition, actually practicing with your intuition. One of the best things you can do, one of the favorite things my students do, is use my insight card deck, which is a card deck that I designed specifically for intuitive development and to help you learn your intuitive language. And I have a free online deck on my website that you can practice with anytime, 24/7. It's always up. Anytime you need a little guidance, you pull a card, and these cards are different than typical like oracle cards or tarot cards, in that they're just pictures. But they're pictures that are designed to speak to your intuition. So they unfold a little story and a message based on the first thing you see on the card. So they're a lot of fun, and they're a really good intuitive development tool that allows you to sort of take this practice out into your life. So when you have to make a decision, you recognize what your intuition feels like, and then you can trust it and live by it 24/7.
In your book, you share about the second illumination key and how it really transforms the information we get from the non local field. So, how do we trust that information, and how does that come to us?
Yeah, so great question. So trusting it is really the result of, either seeing it work out or failing forward. Sometimes we have an intuitive nudge and we don't listen, and we're like, oh, I knew I should have trusted my intuition, right? Like famous last words. You knew your intuition was saying, yeah, don't do that, but you do it anyway. And you're like, no, that was the wrong choice. But actually, that's the greatest way to get a validation of your intuition. So on the bright side, when we don't follow our intuition and we realize that, we really get a good validation of how our intuition feels and how it speaks to us. But prior to that, really being able to pick up on this code that we're receiving at all times. So the universe is constantly sending us signals of this information of things that are happening that we're entangled with all the time. So, what we entangle with are things that are in our hearts and minds, things that we think about, people we have feelings for. Those things draw in our connections in our field. And so they're the things that we're naturally going to respond to. You probably aren't going to just be thinking about some company and have them call you at the same time, because you're not entangled with some company, but a friend or family member or someone that you have feelings for. You'll find out that you'll find coincidences and serendipities happening in your relationship because you're entangled with your thoughts and your feelings. So we start to catch the code that really touches us personally. So really, to open up with that and connect with our inner space, we just have to be still. We have to be calm. We have to open up to receive. We live in this world where we're so conditioned to go out and do. But we got to stop doing, just listen, right? Because intuition is all about receiving. We don't have to work for it. We don't have to get a PhD for it to work. We just have to learn how to open up and receive it.
I like how in your book you talk about do nothing like it's your job. I love that.
I say that all the time. It's like one of my favorite things to say, honestly, because think about it. We all feel guilty for doing nothing, right? And if you're not doing anything, you're like, oh, I should be doing something. And that's how we end up getting sucked into social media or doing all this, the mindless stuff that we just can't turn our minds off. So that's why I tell people, like, actually just put white space on your calendar, because doing nothing is the most important time. That's when you get the big ideas, right? When you're taking a shower or just driving to work in the morning or going for a bike ride, that's when those big ideas pop in your head, because that's the only time they can get through. I mean, how many times have you ever had a great idea while you were like sitting at your computer writing? Like, not usually. You usually happens when you're not working, not in the middle of your day, right? It's when you take that calm break and open up space between your thoughts. That's when your intuition can slide in and give you those revelations and those insights and those nudges that we're looking for, that to really help us propel our lives forward.
What types of intuitive downloads are there? And, when we get them, how do we know that we're receiving them?
Yeah, so there's a lot of different, basically a few different ways where we can just naturally invite intuition into our life. And my favorite is Einstein's idea of aimlessness. And one of the things he talked about was, again, how important it was to be aimless. And he would talk about how he got his best insights just sitting on his rocking chair, rocking, doing nothing, right? So being aimless allows our mind to relax and allows our imagination to really open up to the little insights that come in and to create new ideas. So being aimless is a really powerful thing. And the more we incorporate that, doesn't mean we do nothing, like, and just be lazy, right? Like, there's a difference between being lazy, doing nothing, and actually being aimless, being open, and just being in presence in your life. So that kind of simple presence of mindfulness and aimlessness opens up I call them no mind portals, right? So these portals that really open up and allow our intuition to come through. Now, dreaming, sleep is another portal, right? I like call sleep backdoor intuition. So a lot of times, if you can't get something through in the light of day when you're awake and conscious, your intuition will slip in through your dreams. And there's so many different ways that our intuition can guide us or send us messages in our dreams, or even when we wake up in the middle of the night, right? For some of the best insights that I get are right when I wake up in the morning, or if I wake up in the middle of the night and I just have a thought drop into my head, right? So when we have our minds in that sort of, I think there's like different brain waves that are activated, they're attuned to the flow and the frequency of this sort of intuitive information. But simply, it's just a time when your mind's out of the way. We really need to get out of our own way, quiet our minds, and just get more into that zone of peace and power. And we can do it, and we can pull down this insight intentionally too. And that's one of the things that I focus on in this book. Like, we don't have to just sit around and wait for our intuition to show up. If you set that intention and you open up to your intuition, it will be there. So you can pull an insight card to get some guidance for a day. You can do a meditation and ask for guidance to come through while you're doing an insight meditation, right? You can journal and just let the insights flow through your pen. So being intentional about your intuition is a really wonderful practice that to bring into your life, and to open up to that on a regular basis and start cultivating it.
So, can we cultivate everyday miracles doing this?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's one of the great things about it. And if you when you get to the end of the book, that's when we start digging into that really the deep stuff, the miracles, the impossible things. You sort of start the book out just really just warming up to your inner guidance system and learning your intuitive language and how it all works. But really, as we go deeper, we start seeing that there's really more and more potential for us around these things. For example, talking about miracles. So there's the law of attraction and manifestation, and there's miracles like that that come through alignment of our thoughts and the expansion of the universe. But then there's also the miracles that come with intuitive experience and power. So when we think of something like, think about remote viewing. And folks who are like, I can see something that's happening on another side of the world, not even anywhere near me. I have a layout. I know. You also hear of situations where people will have psychics trying to find lost people and where they are, and they can identify these locations even though they're nowhere near this. So how is this possible? It should be impossible. It should be a miracle to be able to do something like this. But when you understand the non-local field, and that our intuition can really access all of the data that's being stored there, regardless of where it is in space or time, suddenly it makes sense. It's not a crazy idea anymore. And that's what's so cool about modern physics, is all of this stuff is feasible and aligns with physics, right? So it's not something it's not like the Newtonian physics of cause and effect, where like that is no longer a possibility. The possibilities are now wide open, and I'm really excited to see where it starts to take us.
Well, on that note, we're going to pause here for a quick break. We've been speaking with Kim Chestney in regards to her new book, The Illumination Code. You've been listening to Moments with Mary Ann. We'll be right back after these messages from our sponsors.
Are you an author, speaker, or expert who is looking for more publicity? Visit radioguestlist.com and sign up for free interview requests from shows looking for guests. Radio Guest List is the #1 free booking resource for radio, podcasts, and TV talk shows who are looking for experts like you right now. Visit radioguestlist.com and sign up today to get the visibility you deserve.
There comes a moment when you realize you're somewhere special. When you discover that each beautiful creature that you see has been rescued from a life of absolute horror and brought to this incredibly free place. Here's where their lives were forever changed, and where yours will as well. Discover over 500 tigers, bears, and lions at the brand new visitor center at the Wild Animal Sanctuary just outside Denver. For more information, visit wildanimalsanctuary.org. Discover true freedom at the Wild Animal Sanctuary.
It's one thing to become attached to your perfect home, but what do you do when that home becomes attached to you? A family in dire need of a fresh start, a mysterious house tied to the past. Buried deep within the foundation of the old Far Hill Manor lies a centuries-old secret. Dark forces or something stronger just waiting to be discovered. Caretaker, a supernatural thriller by breakout authors R.J. Halpert.
Internationally recognized and award-winning author Judy Goodman works and teaches outside the box of limited thinking. Working with people from every walk of life, her goal is to empower you to be the best you can be, no matter what the challenge is. Born with the gift of seeing beyond our normal vision, she has an extraordinary gift of working with every challenge. Teaching beyond conventional wisdom, her work is described as life-changing. Visit judygoodman.com. That's judygoodman.com.
I'd like to thank Jason Eastwood at Guitarfulness for sharing his inspiring music and talent with us. His music is known worldwide for cultivating atmospheres of harmony, inner peace, and clarity. Visit Jason's website at guitarfulness.com. Join his newsletter, be part of his community, and download his music. Welcome back to Moments with Mary Ann. We're here today with special guest Kim Chestney, who's sharing with us her new book, The Illumination Code: 7 Keys to Unlock Your Quantum Intelligence. So what role does vibration play in the quantum field?
Yeah, it's a really big role, actually. So and this ties into string theory and really the idea that one of the views that we have of the universe is that we are living really just in this sea of vibration. And that's, tied in with the energy and information in the quantum field that's all around us. So based on how we're vibrating, the frequency, whether our wavelengths are high or low or long or short, determines the type of information that we're going to align with and we're going to be able to intuitively access. So for translating that into everyday experience, it really connects with what I found after working for over 30 years researching and developing intuition, and the work that we do in my school intuition lab, is that when we're feeling that we are in a high vibration place, a place of peace, a place of calm, a place of power, a place of love, a place of joy, all of those kinds of places naturally attune us to the intuitive frequency. The data that's stored in the information field that's guiding truth is stored at a very high vibration for the human mind. So it's much easier for us to tap into our inner wisdom and our inner luminescence when we align with those sort of loving, high vibration energies. Now, so for example, when, human beings, we're never like, oh, I'm like living at this high vibration frequency every moment of my life, right? Our life is full of ups and downs. Our lives is full of these waves. So there's going to be times when we're at the top of the waves, and there's going to be times when we're more at the bottom of the waves. There's going to be times when we're sick or we're not feeling good or we're feeling a little down, right? And that's okay. That's a normal part of life. Those just aren't going to be the moments when we get the best guidance from within. And it really makes sense. So if you think about it, when we're down, we often find ourselves like not saying nice things to ourselves or feeling like we can't do things or feeling less than, right? Because we're aligned with these lower frequency energies that aren't the empowering true north of our intuition. Then once we start to feel better and once we get back to feeling like ourselves, we can connect to that true guiding voice that will show us the way. Because real intuition is always expansive. It wants us to grow, wants us to expand our minds. It wants us to bring the best into the world. It wants to bring us together. It fuels us with coherence and love and unity. All of these things are the driving forces behind our intuition. So intuition really, truly is nothing to be afraid of. That's the thing that's the big joke, because we've been afraid of it for so long, but really that we're never safer than when we're trusting our own intuition and following it. So being in that place is the ultimate place that we want to be in. The more we expand and grow and raise our vibration, the more we're going to be able to live in the flow of life and the acceptance of the unfolding of the universe around us. So it's really good for us to set that intention when we're doing intuition work, doing a little meditation to get in a high vibe place, Smiling is a great way to raise your vibration. I force all my students to smile when we're doing a meditation before we start working with our intuition cards or whatever activity we're doing, because just that little simple act of a smile, and you can do that right now as as you're listening to this conversation, just a little smile, and you can just feel that shift, that vibrational shift within you when you sort of light up inside. Even if you force yourself to smile, it still works. So just being clued into those subtle vibrational energies can really make a difference when you're tuning into your intuition. Just remember, your intuition will always make you feel bigger, powerful, and will show you to truth. Whereas all the other voices in your head can make you feel smaller or less than. That's not intuition's job. It's not going to just tell you fake stuff to make you feel good or egotistical or anything like that. It's going to show you your true path of power to empower you to become the person that you've always been meant to be and lead that life that you were made for.
I often hear Buddhists talk about the path of non-suffering, and in your book, you talk about the source of suffering. Can you share that with us?
Yeah. So, in terms of looking at life as this interconnected whole that our intuition helps us to recognize, it becomes clear that the real source of suffering is the illusion that we are disconnected from each other. We feel like we're living in this material world, and we see all these objects, and it just, we feel like we're different from them, we're separate from them, and we're disconnected, and we think there's all this empty space between us. But in reality, there is no such thing as empty space. Everything around us and the invisible quote unquote space between us is alive with information and energy of the quantum field. So we're actually swimming in this beautiful sea of life at all times. But we are living in the material world at this densified level, and the physical reality feels like it's a world of separateness. So when we feel separate, we feel vulnerable, we can feel alone, we can feel like we need to preserve ourselves, right? So we have this instinct for this ego drive for self-preservation. So then it sort of becomes an us and them scenario, because everybody's got their own self that they're trying to take care of and protect. And that really lays the ground for a lot of the challenges and the friction that we see in this world. Ultimately, there's going to be a moment where we have to decide if we are going to stay in this space of otherness and disconnection, or if we're really going to start to rely on our intuition to find the commonality that links us all and brings us all together as one.
So there's so much going on in with the planet right now and the people on it. There's just so much chaos.
Mhm.
So how is it that our connection to, our intuition, does that help with maybe the planet as a whole being able to come to a different state?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the hope, that's the dream. I think right now the world that we're experiencing around us is the byproduct of being disconnected from our intuition. So we're working against each other because we see each other as separate and different. And this creates competition, this creates otherness. There's so much that stems from these ideas that if we were really connected to our intuition, we would see ourselves in everyone else, and we would realize that we're part of this greater interconnected oneness that works together. And really, because your intuition is never going to guide you to a place of that's going to hurt anyone else, right? Because intuition is about the manifestation of the best world, right? So it's really guiding us forward. And the more we start to listen to what it's actually saying to us and start trusting that and living by it, then hopefully we can all just sort of be that small change in our life that eventually gets to a tipping point where we can make this shift to a more peaceful world, to a place where, we can all live in harmony.
So is love a form of entanglement?
So love, that's funny because spoiler alert, right? So where this whole book ends up going, right? Because this was my journey too. Like I developed these keys in the way that, I experienced them through my own unfolding, and where all of this goes. And the final chapter really brings love into it, because we can talk about science, we can talk about physics, and there's a certain language that we use to describe how the universe works. But what I've, really found through, learning from these great physicists is that all of the things that we experience spiritually, intuitively, have really this a similar word in everyday language. And the word that keeps coming up in physics over and over again is coherence. And this word coherence it's really the ultimate state of two things working in alignment, or multiple things working in alignment. And living in a world of coherence, a world where things come together and live together in the flow, translates to our feeling of love. When we're in a state of coherence with another person, we're in the state of love. And there's no way to describe the state of love unless you've been in the state of love. There's almost no words for it, right? So it's much more than a feeling. And this state of love is really what's on the other side of all of our spiritual journeys, other side of our intuition, other side of physics, right? So coherence, right? That's where we all want to be as one in this oneness, the universal eternal oneness that is in a coherent state of love. So in this state, our intuition is key. It's key to learn how to get into it and to feel the coherence and to intuit the best way to get into alignment with life and be coherent with the unfolding of our own individual lives.
In your book, you mention that the quantum field does not dictate our fate. It holds all possibilities. Can you share more about that with us?
Yeah, and that's a really important concept because, so we talk about, one of the things we talk about with this unified quantum field that is ever present and interpenetrates us and is all around us, is that it also shows that there's really no such thing as time, right? So everything that's ever happened, or everything that will happen, is happening in the eternal now. We are just singular points of consciousness that are experiencing time from a relativistic point of view. So, just like Einstein's theory of relativity, we understand that matter is equal to energy. So there's really no such thing as matter either. That's another illusion. But time is something that we experience because we're living in a linear world of before and after in relativity. But in reality, the future is already happening. You hear people talking about the idea of remembering the future. It's very much like that because the past and the future are both stored in the eternal memory of the universe, which is this quantum field. Dr. Irvin Laszlo refers to it as the Akashic field, right? Because it's like the Akashic record. It stores all the information of everything that's ever happened or will happen. So understanding that, people like you'll hear about prophets in the Bible or Nostradamus, and how did he predict all these things that came through? Well, in essence, he was just remote viewing the future. He could see something that was happening in a different point in time. It didn't happen to be something that was locally happening when he was there, but he was able to see that in the future because in some way it's already happened or is happening in the moment. So when we start talking about that, people start to worry because they're like, wait a second, what about my free will? Does that mean that my life is predestined and everything's going to happen no matter what? But the scientists' answer to that is no, because when you really dig into these really, very cool theories in quantum physics, talking about the multiverse and alternate realities, things like that, is that it's not that we live in a fixed, determined universe with a singular path. That's not how we can know the future. The reality is that we live in a world of probabilities, and that every time we make a choice, we are creating our unique path through all the many outcomes that could possibly be. So there's theoretically bajillions of different realities and different paths our life could have taken. So we just create our own unique path through all of these possibilities by our choices and the way we live our lives. So there is there is a multiplicity of possibilities at every moment when we listen to our intuition or don't listen to our intuition as we co-create our lives with the universe.
As someone starts to go through the process of remote viewing, what are some things that they need to be aware of?
Yeah, so there's a really good exercise in this book for learning to remote view, and that really is the thing I've found with my students when we jump right into the remote viewing. And everyone's like, "No way, I can't do this. No way, it's impossible," right? And that's very common because we're trained to think that things like this are impossible. But actually, remote viewing is one of the easiest things to do. I've honestly, and I don't think I've ever had a student who was not able to do it. So it's one of my favorite things to teach. And there's a great little exercise in the book to help you practice it. You can practice it with a friend. You can practice it, when you're going somewhere new. You can try to remote view a place that you've never been before and see if you can't get some hits before you get there. And what's really important about remote viewing is you have to understand when you remote view something, it's not like you're necessarily see the entire picture as if you're standing there with every single piece of information that's there. Now, human intuition is still very rudimentary. We're just still learning how to use it. We're like children with our intuition. So it's like you turn on the TV, and it was like the old days when you had a bad internet connection and it would take like a long time to download. Right now, we can just pop up a picture and it'll just pop up instantly and we can see everything. But early on, it'd be like pixels by pixels, or you get a little bite here or there. That's more like how our intuition is functioning right now. You'll get little bits and bites of information, like you might see like a red cup or a waterfall or a dog, right? You might get a couple things. You're likely not going to get the whole thing unless you have a really good intuition. There are people out there who do and do get a lot, but most of us will just get little bits and bites. So it's really fun to start playing with your intuition in your remote viewing. You can do that on a daily basis, any place, or if you're going to meet a new friend or meet any friend, and you can kind of see what color shirt they're wearing. Is it going to be a red shirt, a striped shirt? Tune into your intuition, see if you get a hit. So there's a lot of different exercises that I give in this book to work with remote viewing, and just really understanding that you just want to look for the little hits and the little individual drop-ins and not focus so much on, having some grand vision, right? Because intuition's not like that. It's maybe someday it'll be like that. Maybe someday when we get to be so advanced as a civilization, we'll be able to do those things in a more robust way. But for now, just pay attention to those little sort of bits and bytes and drop-ins of information when you start playing with those things.
Now, do you offer a remote viewing class as well, aside from the book?
Yeah. Yeah. So I offer a class every fall. It's called Higher Powers. And we do all of these kinds of things. We do remote viewing and different types of intuitive development practices that people don't think are possible. So you can practice with a group. We've been doing it in my house. People have been, for the last couple of years, people have been identifying the layout of my house, where I live, like different designs and like decorations in my house. So it was really, really cool. So I think next year we're going to switch to another location because all the students know my house now.
And you gotta mix that up so they don't know where things are.
Right. You need a clean slate, right? So that no one knows anything. That's the other thing. Going to make sure that you don't have a bias ahead of time.
So, how can we learn to recognize the signs that the universe gives us? Because I think a lot of times we just kind of pass those by.
Right. Yeah. And so the idea with these signs is it gets back to this the concept of attention. What is our attention drawn to? And most of us don't realize that our intuition is deeply, deeply tied to what we randomly notice. So just some tips for recognizing intuition. They are the thoughts, feelings, insights that arrive out of nowhere, right? So we know information is coming from the quantum field when we're not generating it ourselves, right? So it's not something that we're feeling or responding to with our physical senses. It's not something that we're figuring out with our mind, trying to process. It's not something that we're generating with like personal emotions or like wants, needs, attachments, right? So all of those different pathways are connected to our intuition, only they're the ones where our intuition arrives and comes to us out of nowhere. It's that thought that pops into your mind. Oh, that bright idea. I should do this. Or maybe I should call my mom today. And then you found out your mom was like sad and really wanted you to call, right? You just have a moment of epiphany, right? Or there'll be different ways that you're really just moved for no apparent reason. And this ties into signs because what's the key commonality of seeing signs? Like, oh, you happen to look at the clock at 1:11 every day, or you look over at a truck and see, some sort of message of goodwill that you just needed to hear that day. Maybe there's like a bumper sticker or something that says, like God is love, or trust in life, or some little nice thing like that that cheers you up. What is the key factor? The key factor is that you know to look at something at that particular time. So one of the things we work with at Intuition Lab is learning that intuition is not just coming from the inside, it also touches you from the outside. Because remember, it's all relative. So just like there's not really any past and future, there's not technically any inside or outside, right? It's just from this vantage point where we're living at. So understanding the outside world as an extension of our inner world is key. And recognizing that the things that we happen to notice are often very significant. So when you just happen to notice the clock every day at the same time, or happen to wake up in the middle of the night at the same time, or just happen to be able to, see something or recognize some pattern that you weren't even looking for, right? These are all cues that our intuition is trying to get our attention. It's giving us that little nudge. It's reminding us, hey, there's something more to this life than you realize. Once my students start taking, I have a year-long program that I do. And in the first quarter, we do an intuition attunement. So that's when we sort of open up all of our 4 intuitive pathways. We get into our intuitive zone. And one of the things that happens after we do that is you start noticing more of these signs. You'll start looking at number patterns, seeing number patterns everywhere, looking at the clock the same time of day multiple times. And then the more you're in tune with your intuition, the more these synchronicities start to happen. So it's super cool when you start to realize that the universe is talking back with you, right? You're setting these intentions and putting it out there for your intuition. And you're not just getting signs from within you, you're getting signs from outside of you too, just from what your attention's drawn to. So it's a really fun practice and a way to bring some magic and wonder back into your life.
So I know we talked about remote viewing. You also go into past lives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so technically, I've been struggling with the right term for this. So technically, since there's no past and no future, I started to call them other lives, right? Because they are actually all happening in the eternal now, even though they might seem sequentially past to us in the journey of our soul's growth, right? In some way, they're all actually still happening in this moment because there's no such thing as time. So past life recall is one of the most powerful things. Oh my gosh, we just had a past life mastermind last week with my group, and it's unbelievable now. We've been doing this for, I guess, 7 years now, and it's gotten so powerful that, we'll have we have different groups of people that sort of crowdsource people's past lives to try and get validation of the same lives. So we'll all do past life readings for each other and then come together and share and compare notes. And this year we had 4 different groups. And I think 3 of those groups, we had at least 2 different people bringing through the exact same lives for people who don't even know each other like that well at all and never talk to each other, talk about the same lives and bring through the same information. So it's really exciting to see how when you do this work with other people and you do things in a group, it really energizes the connection, and you're able to do these things that are really bring through great evidence that this is very real and that everyone can do it. I have all kind of people and students in my class, everyone from like lawyers, rabbis, moms, you name it, tech people, all kinds of people, and everyone can do these things. So that's the real message. You don't have to be some guru or sage or psychic to do this stuff. It's part of our unique wiring that each and every human being has.
In your book, you talk about deja vu. What is that?
So I have a theory about deja vu that, that it's just this little moment when we are tapped into that field of all knowingness, and we just kind of like slip into the quantum field of everything information, and we recognize a place at a place in time, and it feels like we've been there before because we're actually moving into the field where all of this stuff is recorded. So it's a really kind of interesting way of understanding deja vu as a union with the field. That's when we sort of step back from our individual consciousness for like just a moment, just a blip, to feel that oneness. And we might know like what's just ahead with deja vu because we're living in that ever presence of time and space.
What are some things that you want our readers and listeners to take away from your book?
The ultimate purpose of the book, and apart from obviously reaffirming that intuition is real and that it's a natural part of our human thinking potential, I think that the key behind it all is the rediscovery of magic and wonder in the universe. And that's really what our quantum intelligence leads us to. It takes us right back to all of those amazing experiences that are outside the scope of our linear thinking and brings them back into the threshold of reality. And when we recognize that we can do these magical things and that there's a whole world of wonder and discovery out there, it opens up the whole new frontier. I mean, everyone's talking about going out into space or, exploring the universe and spacecraft and solar systems and all of that stuff. But the real new frontier, it's not out in the cosmos. The real frontier is within us in the microcosmos, and the information in the worlds that we have access to through our own intuitive potential. And with time, as our minds expand and we learn to use more of our brain, it's really exciting to find out what we're actually going to discover there.
And where can our listeners connect with you? What's your website?
So you can learn all about my work at kimchestney.com. And I have all kind of free tools, my free insight card deck, a free intuition awakening guide. You can find out what your intuitive type is there. So there's a lot of fun things to do that you can just start working with your intuition right now and playing with it and start getting some of those validations that help you trust and know your intuition really thoroughly as you connect to yourself. And then you can also find more about my classes and workshops if you want to start practicing with me and with other people at my school, Intuition Lab, and that's intuition-lab.com.
Well, Kim, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
And thank you so much for having me. It's fantastic talking with you.
Well, thank you, Kim. It's been such an honor to spend this time with you and to talk about your new book, The Illumination Code: 7 Keys to Unlock Your Quantum Intelligence. The Illumination Code's available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and everywhere books are sold. And remember, support our indie bookstores. If you don't see it on the shelf, just ask for them to order it. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in. You've been listening to Moments with Mary Ann, where we make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Mary Ann is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Mary Ann will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.